Hey friends, welcome to the first layer. My name is Richard Cleveland. Today we are painting or continuing our painting on the Man of Steel. This is part 9. In the last episode we worked on the eyes. We're not completely done with them yet, but we're going to come back to them in a little bit. Right now what we're doing, I forgot to hit record or turn on my mic, so I'm going back. I already started what we were doing, so I make mistakes too. What we're doing today is we've mixed up some brown. The brown that we used today was flat brown. We used some flat brown and black. We mixed them together, and now what we've got is a really dark brown. The reason that I'm using brown and not going straight black is because nobody's hair is straight black. We do have a black undercoat under here, but we are going to do some washes later on. We're going to do some highlights and stuff like that. So we are starting with our number 8 brush today, and we're going to just continue painting. We haven't done very much, so let's go and change to that camera, shall we? All right, so here we have, you can see it, there's some I've already started here where it's a little glossy. You can see it's not quite black, which is exactly what I'm after. And I'm just going to continue covering this. I want to get good coverage on this right now. I'm using the number 8 to basically cover all of my bases. And I've mixed up quite a bit of this paint, so I should be fine. I'm not going right down to the scalp with it. I'll come back and do that area with a finer brush a little bit later on. Right now, I'm just trying to get as close as I can and get into all those crevices, and that's why I'm using the brush that I'm using, so that I can get into all those crevices, because this is really sculpted hair on the Man of Steel. But I also don't want to mess up the work that we've already accomplished. Because we have accomplished a lot of work on that skin, and I don't want to ruin it or have to go back to it later. So I'm just going to start by getting the bulk of it done with this black brown. And because it is such a deep, rich color, when we go to put a black wash on this and start building up our highlights, you'll see it a little bit later on. So we're just going to continue coating this hair, and we want to get as nice, even a coverage as we can. So all we've done in terms of our paint today is we just mixed black and flat brown from Vallejo, and about equal parts, and we've made quite a bit of it. Now I could have done this also by using the other acrylic paints, and you can certainly do that, by the way. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. I mean, you don't have to use the exact paints I'm using either. You can use whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you can get in your area. I know not everybody can get these paints. So I know Vallejo in Calgary now is becoming very hard to find, and I've noticed that as of a lot lately, because the company that was carrying them has not been bringing them back in, and I don't know why. They're wonderful paint. I absolutely love them, and they're really good. They flow well, they mix well. And we've got a lot of paint here, so we're going to take advantage of it. We're going to cover this whole area. And I'm using a much bigger brush here for this exact reason, so that I can cover a lot of area really quickly. And we're trying again not to get it on areas that we've painted and have, you know, our color on them, our final color. but we are. I can see that that black brown looks a little bit more natural. We will put some black over top of it as well. And we just get right down to where we know we can get with this brush. Because this hair is incredibly sculpted. So there's a lot of little nooks and crannies to get into. You can kind of rotate it and have a look at it as you're going through it or as you're painting it. And under certain light, you're going to see these little bits of brown highlights. Now, I know some people are going to be saying, well, Superman hair is raven black. Well, in the comic books, yes, it is. But in real life, it wouldn't be. So we're going to just, I think we're pretty good where we are. Let's get a finer brush so we can get into some of those detailed areas. We're going to use this brush here. It's pretty stiff because it's brand new. So we're just going to soften it up, and we'll start grabbing some of our paint and getting into some of those finer areas. Starting with those finer areas, we're going to get right into here. And now, I'm not trying to make a nice, clean, neat line across the head. I'm just pulling up where the hair is. So I still get that nice, clean look without damaging what I've done before. And I'm just working in, and it's also going to give me that look of actual strands of hair coming off of the figure. And I like using flatter brushes for this kind of stuff because I can sneak up on the line and then just pull it right in. And because they're flat, I can turn them on their side and get a little bit more dimensionality out of them. And as we continue to build this color, you can see how close we're getting here, and we can see that we're just pulling back on certain areas. I want a finer line. I just kind of do that, and it pulls back on all of the sculpting. You see that? And we just keep going, sneak up on it. Now we're really close to that ear, so I want to come back the other way so I don't get any paint on the ear, but and there we go. Again, just sneak up on it. You'll have a much cleaner paint job if you sneak up on it. There we go. Right in and around there. And there are going to be some tougher areas on this particular model to get at. And they're going to be down behind that ear especially. So I'm not going to do a stroke that goes from top to bottom. I'm going to actually kind of pull away from the skin just to kind of gently fill in that area. Just dragging my brush to the contour. And when I come to close to the end, I'll start to sneak it back up. There we go. And then you can just kind of fill in. Some of these areas nobody's going to see anyway, but I know they're there, so it bothers me. Is that crazy? Probably. There we go. I'm happier with that. Now you're trying to keep your hands off the hair as best you can. And I've left this paint thick, so I didn't go back and thin it out as you guys normally would see me do. I left it thick so that I can really get nice clean lines out of it just by pulling. And again, it's that light touch to doing all that pulling. Now whoever did Superman's haircut here needs to go back to barber school, because it's uneven in areas. But I really like this model. I mean, the sculpture is beautiful. This is the back of the neck. You can see there's a lot of little bits of stray hairs here. And we are doing our best to just bring all those, keep it natural looking. And remember, we are making this particular Man of Steel a little older. So we don't have to be super perfect here. Remember, this is more of our Crisis on Infinite Earths Superman. And we're getting very close to coming around back to that front. Now I'm going to try and keep this off the ear so I don't have to come back and fix that later. Trying to get as close as I can and make those lines work for me. I'll just put a finger there and just kind of sneak up on some of those stray hairs. You see how I'm just kind of sliding the brush back in to catch those stray hairs around the ear. And that is covered in. Now we're just going to do this area. Again, just kind of taking our time, turning our brush when we need to turn our brush. If you need to go to a smaller brush, go to a smaller brush. Going to a smaller brush is not the end of the world. Now in some of this area, I might actually come back and do a smaller brush. Especially when we get to the eyebrows, I'm going to be using a much smaller brush. Actually, I think I'm pretty close to being at that point now. Just checking my fingers to make sure I don't have excess paint on my fingers. Problem with hair like this is that you really have to move things around to get where you want to be. I almost can't see every curve. Going in here, for instance, very, very tight curve right in there without trying to get a lot of paint on areas that we don't want it. All right. So, what else can we kind of get at here? Well, we've got this brush in our hand. There are some areas I'm going to try and pull in with a smaller, tighter brush. And I think I'm almost at that stage now. Yep, I'm at that stage now. So let's take that brush and put it down there, and let's try not to take off the paint we just put on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give this model a little bit of a blow dry first. I want to set that first color that we've gotten. Just get all that color set. Okay, so we've got our color set now, for the most part. So now we're going to switch over to a much finer brush. Something that, like this zero will work fine for what we're going to do now. Because all we're going to do is come back and just really define some of those areas that we missed, like right in here. Get that curl. Get those nice lines, because this is all very sculpted and we don't want to damage our paint job that we've already been working on by getting paint everywhere, because that's not what we want to do. And I may have to take off my glasses for this and put on my funky fold downs so that I can see what I'm doing. And this is the very, very tight stuff. And this is where we start to get a little quiet. And we try and just clean up those hairlines. Superman's a little tougher to do because of the way that this hair is sculpted. But we're going to do our best. Try and make it as clean as possible. And now that I have these on, I can see what I'm doing. You guys might not because my fat head's in the way, but I can see all the lines now that I have to get at. To smooth out that hair. And make sure that it looks good. There we go. You're not going to catch every stray little area. Try and set the model down so you have more control. There we go. And as I look at this, I can see the areas now that I have to get into and just tidy up. Some of them are easy to get into, some of them not so much. Especially when you have undercuts in the hair like we have with this model. But we can smooth those transitions out. There we go. That looks better. Getting the tip here is going to be a little on his curl. Is a tough area. But we're going to take our time. If you rush, that's when you start to get into problems. Just take your time. Holding the model as steady as you can. And again, just sneak up on the areas that you got to sneak up on. So we're coming around on the inside of that little curl. And I could probably have my light on to see this. I forgot I have a little light on here. There we go. So I can see what I'm doing. You guys can't, but I can. And again, I'm just sneaking up on that line. Just so it doesn't look like there's hair or there's a skin in my hairline. And there we go. Just bring that around. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. Now I'm just going to inspect it on the bottoms here of all these hair tips. And I'm just going to come back with a little bit of that paint and just kind of grab those hair tips. There we go. Find areas like that one there. Well, we got a pretty big area right in there that we need to address. I'll just use this brush right here. It's where two pieces of his hair come together. And it's tough to get paint in there because they kind of overlap and create a little hole. But we did it. And then we'll just feather that out a little bit. All right, so now we're going to continue doing around that hairline. Getting back to this little brush that we've been using, just to kind of help us with some of that fill-in work. And then we'll go all the way around and just kind of double check everything. The worst part is right around these ears. Because remember, we're going to come back and work this a little later too, with some grays and some blacks. What we're trying to create here now is just how the hair comes off the skin. And we are almost there. And by doing it like that, we create, not such an even line, but we create a nice look. Now, we got some color where we didn't want it, but we'll come back and fix that later. Now, the eyebrows. Here's the big thing about these eyebrows, is there's way too much paint on my brush for starters. Is we are going to take these eyebrows and get them as close to that edge as possible without just putting on a big glob of paint. You see we've got this area right here. And I'm just going to kind of pull down from that break line, because these are sculpted eyebrows, so by keeping that sculpted line covered up, it's going to create the illusion that this is actual hair and not a sculpted piece. Short, sharp strokes help us a multitude here. We're going right up to that line and we're just pulling back. And as you can see, I'm rolling my brush as I take it out of the paint, rolling it on the edge so I can keep a nice point on my brush. And that's important, just selling the illusion of the hair. And now we can start doing some of this fill-in. You see, I'm not trying to cover it all at once, because these are severely sculpted, these eyebrows. So I'm just taking my time, and we're going to be doing some highlighting on this as well. And then we're going to come down to the bottom here where they start and just pull right away from that line. There we go. That's going to sell the illusion of these being sculpted eyebrows. You see, I'm holding it against my chest. That allows me to have a little bit more control over my brush. Resting my finger, finding that edge, and just pulling away from it. And just following the natural contours of this hair. Getting up on that line and just pulling away from it. There we go. Now you can see the difference between the two eyebrows as we look at it. You can see now this one looks like it's got some natural hairs in it. When we start to put in some of the other color, we are going to see a lot more of that. And this is going to mat out quite a bit. I don't really want his hair super glossy. I am going to do a black wash on his hair as well. That'll kind of sell a little bit more, and then we're going to start to put in the gray highlights. And we'll actually do that today. We'll start to put in some of the gray into his temples. And then we're getting pretty close to being done with the head on this Superman. So let's continue on the other eyebrow. Now I have to turn them around and kind of rest them down so that I can find, I want to make sure I got a good point on my brush. And I'm just finding that edge. As you can see here. And I'm not spending, a lot of energy trying to define my brush or my brush strokes. I'm just trying to make it look like hair. Now, with something like this, I'm constantly flipping it around, as you guys can see, because I was pulling this way before, now I'm pulling the opposite way. So it can be a little trying. And we're trying to make these eyebrows as even as we can. And we're just going to keep moving around. Again, try and roll that brush up on the edge so you get a point, which is what we're looking for here. And again, we're just sneaking up on that edge. Now, somebody suggested that I use mascara brushes, and I thought that was a brilliant idea, although I've never used mascara brushes. I am going to try them out and see how they work. And just roll that brush out of the paint to keep a point on it. We're trying to make the hair all go in the same direction. At least we're trying to. It doesn't look horrible. A little bit more sculpting down here. There we go. Now those kind of look even. And we'll turn this one around and we'll get in under the eyes here. Because again, like I said, these are really, really sculpted. Don't have a death grip on your model either, like I just did. Because that can cause you to shake. And there we go. Now we'll just fill in the other areas we have to fill in. A little bit more up in here. Let's do this first. Just a little bit right in here. There we go. That's not bad at all. Now let's see if we've rubbed off any of that paint. We did a little bit where my hands kept grabbing it. So we're pretty much done with this one for the moment. We'll clean that brush up. Set it off to the side because we're going to use it again. Let's grab that number 8 again that we were using. We'll just pat out a lot of the water. We'll just come back and touch up those areas that our hands were on, where we were holding the model. Now at this stage, I would certainly go ahead and seal everything. We're going to dry it up, we're going to seal it, and then we are going to fix up some of those smaller areas. Actually, let's fix up some of those right now. We've got some clean water here, so we're just going to toss that brush in there for a moment. We got some clean water. We've got some clean should be able to clean up this little area right there that we got on the ear. We might have to scrub it off. If you can't scrub it off without damaging the paint underneath, then make sure that you have a little bit of your flesh base mixed up, which we always tend to do. And we'll just go in and we'll clean that up a little bit. We'll put a little bit of light flesh in there. Oop, that's a little too much. And a little bit of salmon rose. There we go. And now we'll just give that a little mix. Clean off this brush as best we can. This is a junk brush, so let's get a brush that we can rely on. Let's use this brush right here. Just wet it in some clean water. Let's mix up our paint. There we go. We can take a little bit off the brush there, or off the stick, and we'll just go in and touch up the top of that ear. Look at that, we hit the hair. Good thing we got that black still out. Let's go up and just touch up a little bit of areas that you might have hit with the black. Like we did right there. And this is a good time you can come back and just touch up small areas that you want to touch up. And I think that looks okay. I am happy with that. So we'll just take that brush, we'll clean it off, we'll put it back in our stand. Let's go back to this brush that we've been using. Get some of the heavier paint out of it. We got a little bit of work still left to do on this one eyebrow. So, best way for me to attack it would be like this. There we go. That looks much better. And, oh, we need to touch that little area that we touched with our brush over here. The flesh is so easy to cover up. There we are. Okay, so we base coated the hair. We got it looking better looking with the eyebrows. We've got the eyes done now. We've got the lips. I'm pretty satisfied with where the lips are. I may come back and just lighten up some of the areas that I touched up, but that's, you know, that's part of the process. But for the most part, this is done. On the next episode, we're going to start putting in some gray into his brows and into his temples, and we're going to use a little bit of a dry brushing technique on the temples, and we're going to use that base that we used, and then we'll come back and we'll do a wash at the end. So let me put my glasses on so I can see what's going on. I'm pretty satisfied with where we are right now. The Man of Steel is looking good. I think we're in the neighborhood of where we want to be with his overall look. Now it's just, we're going to refine that hair. Then we're going to get to working on the costume and tying everything all together. So right now we've probably got about another 2 episodes left to do on the hair. I am going to spray this now with the Krylon low odor matte. You guys all seen me use this. I'm going to let it dry for a little while, and then I'm going to come back and start. We'll do another episode and we'll start working the color of the hair a little bit. So until next time, my friends, keep your brushes moving, keep the paint flowing, and we will see you on the next one. Be good to one another. Say something nice to somebody tomorrow or today, if you haven't already. And my name is Richard Cleveland. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. We're doing this painting tutorial right now on the Man of Steel. We are going to start another really big project. It is Star Wars centric, it's a Star Wars piece, basically is what it is. When we are done the Man of Steel, we are going to do a Star Wars piece, and then we may have some special pieces coming out that we'll be doing painting tutorials on. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to paint resin pieces as well. This is an FDM printed piece, so we're going to talk about that. So until I see you guys next time, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. I'm going to go have myself a coffee while this all sets, and we'll see you guys next time in episode number 10.